Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of All Access AM. Happy Wednesday morning. Happy National Signing Day for those who celebrate. I'm Billy Embody. This is the real National Signing Day now. It is the early signing period. There's still the February one, but this is where all the recruitniks really get rolling with National Signing Day, as pretty much, I don't know what the number is exactly, 80% or so, 85, maybe even 90% of prospects will put pen to paper with a college this week, Wednesday through Friday. We've got that to talk about at the end of the show. We're also going to have a couple of guests here in the coming days, weeks, and months, breaking down these recruiting classes, breaking down these transfer portal classes for those of you who might want to learn more about who your fellow ACC schools are bringing in through the high school or transfer portal ranks, and even JUCO. JUCO is still a thing out there. So appreciate Pony Up 214 getting up with us this morning on All Access AM. You can find us right here, 7 to 8 a.m. Central Time, 8 to 9 Eastern Time, live Monday, Wednesday, Thursday. And this Wednesday, we have the final college football playoff rankings before all the games are done. Were released Tuesday night. We're going to get into them. Some interesting comments there from Mario Cristobal that I want to get to, as Miami does sit in maybe a spot where they could make it happen, but also a spot where we're going to keep expectations low. And I do want to say the ACC network being very petty, and it might be the holiday spirit, it might be Christmas cheer, but the ACC network is going scorched earth to campaign against Notre Dame for Miami's spot in the college football playoff. They are going to air Miami's win over Notre Dame. They're going to air it 13 times this week leading up to the conference championship games. Pretty incredible stuff there by the ACC network to continue to stump for Miami, as they should. While Notre Dame has the tie with the ACC, and certainly that has hurt the ACC to an extent, they're backing their full-time member of the ACC in Miami. So we do have those rankings to get to. We will also talk about Tosh Lupoi being finally hired by Cal. Feels like, as soon as that job opened, that was his to lose. So I'll be interested to see maybe does he keep a Brian Harsin? Does he keep a Nick Rolovich on staff? What does Ron Rivera do kind of building out that staff with Tosh Lupoi, as he's now been named? I don't know if he got officially named yet, but On3 broke the news that Oregon defensive coordinator Tosh Lupoi was going to be the Cal head coach. So we will talk about that, react to that. I've got a couple thoughts. I'm pretty high on the hire as a whole, and it comes from a place of starting with recruiting. And Cal, you see some of those flashes. You see what they can become if you stack even more talent there. Maybe they're going to be that consistent bowl contender. They were already 7-5 this year. So we will see how it goes there. Of course, some big things that need to happen right away for Cal and Tosh Lupoi. We'll get to that in a little bit. And of course, ACC SEC Challenge began last night as well. And then we'll wrap up with some signing day news. So happy to have you guys. A bunch of you guys already pouring in on Twitter, and we appreciate that. But please go to our YouTube channel, All Access AM. Google it, All Access AM, and hit that subscribe button for me. It helps me out, helps the show out. Really, really appreciate you guys helping us grow this ACC football basketball show that we've got going on, and had a couple good conversations with some regular basketball contributors to kind of get that rolling in the right direction too. So appreciate you guys for joining us. We will get to college football playoff reaction in just a moment, but do want to remind you guys that we are presented on Wednesdays by OPW Solutions. Your property, our priority. OPW Solutions is a full-service commercial service company that has reliability, that has integrity, and that cares about your business and how it can help you reach your goals as far as how you want the presentation of your business to look, whether that be power washing, commercial landscaping, snow and ice control. It's starting to cool down for a lot of you guys. A lot of the snow pouring in across the country. I saw some of my friends in the coaching industry sharing some of their snow pictures and videos already from up north. Or get those parking lots done, Christmas lights hung, and the fence and all of those things repaired to help your curb appeal. OPW Solutions can do it for you in the North Texas area, Oklahoma, Arkansas. And in 2026, they're expanding. So chat with them about what they can do for you. That's 214-444-2305, or email them info@opwsolutions.com. Go to opwsolutions.com. We kick off the show now with college football playoff rankings reactions. We got that to get to, and let me tell you, it is one that I think we know now. We're going to see Miami probably be left out, but there's a lot of football to be played. Here is the top 25 college football playoff rankings. James Madison enters the mix at 25, North Texas at 24. That's important because they're trailing Tulane at 20 as expected. That's no surprise, but that does set the table for really a second group of 5 or group of 6 champion to get in to the college football playoff if there is some chaos in the ACC, which would be Duke winning that ACC championship. Really going to be intrigued as to how all of that plays out for the league, if it does in fact happen. And if it doesn't, then all is well, because you've got Virginia sitting at number 17 over there, 16 Arizona at 18 behind UVA. So we're keeping close tabs on how that is unfolding as the college football playoff final rankings will come out Sunday late morning, I believe. And Miami sits at number 12 ahead of Texas. That's important. Texas was on the campaign trail in a big way after beating Texas A&M, BYU at 11, Notre Dame at 10, and now Alabama at number 9, which is just, look, Alabama beat Auburn, a bad Auburn team in a close game. Notre Dame took care of business out west against Stanford without Jeremiah Love. Now, the committee can dress this up as in whatever way it wants to. This is just a ridiculous move to move Alabama in front of Notre Dame when they haven't been for the last couple of weeks. And you look at them setting that table to have that buffer in case they do lose to a Georgia in the SEC championship game. And that's where it just is kind of, you already got that icky kind of feeling about it, because Alabama has been able to put together a great season since their loss to FSU, but that loss should very much still matter. And at the same time, for them to, have that type of a move up after last week, it just tells you more and more with this committee that they just don't care about the games being played and actually watching them. It really sets the table for Alabama to get in no matter what. And that is where the precedent was set last year with SMU getting in despite losing the ACC championship. There was a lot of debate around it. So now does Alabama already get baked in because Notre Dame is off this week? They don't have anyone to play. Or can Alabama fall all the way out of the college football playoff, especially with Miami sitting there with just 2 losses? If you'd add another loss for Alabama, would that be good enough to move them all the way back behind Miami, as Texas already sits behind Miami? So that would be a really intriguing situation for them to kind of go through. And I'm really, I don't want to say I'm hoping for anything in that regard with the committee's ultimate decision on Alabama if they lose to Georgia in the SEC championship. But I think the move up is really what concerns me the most for a team like Miami. And the fact that Miami, despite all of the positioning and despite all of the, I think, overall feeling that nationally, at least from a lot of the media, it looks like, they're taking it to the College Football Playoff Committee on Miami, that we didn't see them move ahead of a BYU or move ahead of this team or that team. It looks like the committee is really putting that emphasis outside of the ACC, because the ACC ate itself up and didn't help itself with some of its losses, but has put that emphasis on, if you're in your conference championship game, you're in a sense. So that is the hard line to walk here. If 11-1 BYU loses the conference championship, would they still stay ahead of Miami? That would be a huge question as well when you look at the decision the committee would have to make. And that's unfortunate, because of the way the season played out for Miami in the ACC. They didn't get to kind of puff their chest out as much because of that win over Notre Dame, but it's still there, and they're a 2-loss team, and Notre Dame is a 2-loss team. And also, Notre Dame's lost to Texas A&M. Now that Texas A&M last week or 2 weeks ago against South Carolina, and now last week against Texas, team's not playing as well. Does that impact how you should view that loss to Notre Dame or that loss to Texas A&M on your home field? That's something that I would start, pushing if I was the ACC is, look, that loss that Notre Dame has to Texas A&M, yeah, it looked good early and looked good for the last, first 10 weeks of the season, but look at where Texas A&M is now. And they've lost one. They're not playing for an SEC championship. They dropped all the way to 7. Is that as good as losing to a team that was sitting there at number 3 in the country at one point? That's something where it really, kind of irks you more and more as, Miami was able to go out and dominate Pitt. And, Mario Cristobal had a great line when asked kind of about, where his team sits compared to Texas, because, you look at Miami going out and dominating a Florida team 26-7, and Florida dominated, Texas 29-21 earlier this year. Those are two critical wins and losses, in those cases that should weigh a little bit more, because Steve Sarkisian had a really long quote about, watching the games and scoring points and putting points up and things like that. So a little bit of animosity between Mario Cristobal and Steve Sarkisian as they, stump for their teams to get into the college football playoff. But Miami at number 12 is huge for this conference. It at least sets the table that if a BYU loses, if an Alabama loses, you could see them ultimately sneak in. That would be ideal. And I wonder if the committee would change the precedent. I will say it will be one really interesting time to watch if Alabama makes the conference championship game and then ends up getting left out for playing said conference championship game. Here's a look at the bracket now as we kind of wrap up some final thoughts here on the college football playoff. This is going to be the really interesting thing, is obviously at 11 with the ACC champion. Is that the ACC champion, or is that a second group of 5 team? That would be the question now that these college football playoff committee members have to go through and look at and see what is what in terms of how they make this decision, because it does not look good for the ACC right now if Duke were to beat Virginia. And that's something that we're really keeping a close eye on, obviously, this weekend in that 8 p.m. Eastern time on ABC ACC championship game between UVA and Duke. If UVA wins, UVA is going to be the ACC champion. They're going to be into the college football playoff, and that's all that matters. They'll be facing number 6 Ole Miss if things were to stay the same, which, of course, the Rebels are very interesting in their own right. Nationally, that's more interesting than the ACC championship game, no doubt, with everything going down in Oxford with Lane Kiffin and now Pete Golding taking over there. They did get Charlie Weiss Jr. to stay on as OC for the playoff, so that is something that they'll at least have continuity there. But a trip to Oxford awaits the ACC champion if it's UVA. If not, that spot will likely go to Tulane if they win their conference championship game, or it would go to a UNT if they won the ACC championship, or it could go to James Madison in theory, but most likely that would be the AAC champion going to Oxford. The James Madison champion situation, would go to Oregon. So a really tough test there for the 12 seed. But the question I have is, does the committee put a team like Duke into the top 25 and have them jump JMU if they win the ACC championship ACC championship game? They'd have a top 25 win over UVA. They will have battled back to get that. They did play a tough schedule. They played another top 25 team in Tulane. Of course, a bowl eligible team in UConn, and then Illinois. Illinois didn't have the season that it wanted to, but didn't necessarily, wow anyone either. They sit at 8-4 overall. So those would be the arguments I would start to be making if I was Manny Diaz in that Duke Blue Devils team, not putting the cart ahead of the horse that you're going to win the football game on Saturday night. But you did face a schedule in out of conference play that was difficult. That was certainly one that, impacted the way everyone views you nationally. And it's a shame for Duke and it's a shame for the ACC because it's been a part of the reason why that team is in this position. Now, do I think Duke would be deserving as an ACC champion? That's a stretch to say, guys. I mean, it really is. Even though they played a Georgia Tech tough, man, you go and you lose, to UConn in the way they did, and go on the road and lose to Tulane and lose to Illinois. You get blown out, and it's not because of a talent level or this or that. You've got a really, really expensive quarterback, and you've got a coaching staff in its second year that is really hoping to, put it all together. It's just you didn't play well enough. And that's the concerning thing, is that's where that argument can get shut down. And so watching really closely what happens with Duke as a whole here, but the Blue Devils do have their work cut out for themselves to make it into the college football playoff. They'll need a lot of help from the committee. They'll need a lot of posturing to be done. Do I think Duke would beat James Madison on a neutral field? Do I think Duke would beat a UNT on a neutral field? Tulane's already settled it, so that doesn't really matter. I would say yes, but that's not what it's all about. We don't have those data points. That would probably be what the committee would say to that. So ACC is inching closer to that, really scary situation that everybody has feared. And it really forces the ACC, I think, into overdrive to accomplish a couple things. The ACC has to get to a 9-game schedule, and they have to get to it now. They need a little bit more clarity in their conference championship race. They need some of these teams that maybe, let's just say, I don't want to say shouldn't be there, because Duke earned it the way that they did, and the way that their conference slate played out worked out for them, and it is a conference championship. But man, one more data point against if any of those other teams were, another halfway decent team in the ACC, would Duke be sitting there with 2 losses, or would they be sitting there with 3? They survived Clemson, got a little help, what have you, but those are kind of the questions that the ACC has to answer. They've got to get to 9 games. It puts another power conference game on the slate. Who knows, for Duke, that could have been Louisville, that could have been SMU, it could have been, all sorts of different teams in that scenario that maybe drop them down a peg and maybe give the conference championship a little bit more clarity. Maybe they play Miami, so those things could have been worked out. The ACC has to get to a 9-game schedule, and they've got to do it this off season. They've got to put it into overdrive to get that done. And that would ultimately help some of this conversation around the league, because right now it's being controlled by who is actually in the mix to be your conference champion. And I know that is where everyone was the last couple of weeks, but a lot of these other leagues, their conference slate is 9 games. They're playing out those 9 games. And so it's important to kind of remember that piece and know that it's not always going to work out like Ohio State, Indiana, and you're sitting there pretty with like the Big Ten is. It's a incredibly difficult situation to be in for the ACC because of the way their schedule is set up. So they've got to fix it. They've got to fix it now. And then you can still schedule a power conference game or two and play that out and see then if you can run through your conference slate, you get, 9 wins. That's a pretty good situation if you have maybe one other power conference game. All right, if you can, be 8-1 in league play, if you can be 9-0, hard to do, but you should have enough then data points to support yourself in the conversation for the college football playoff. I mean, Miami, if they had faced Duke this year, you're sitting there saying, okay, wow, they have another bowl eligible, win, and Miami was able to take care of business in out of conference play anyway. So it's just a really, really tough situation that the ACC has put in because it's at 9 games. It's absolutely what they have to fix, and then they've got to figure out their messaging about how they can climb out of this hole that this conference has dug itself. And part of that is you've got to either completely schedule down if you're some of these teams that like a Duke, or shoot, SMU has not held up its end of the bargain either at times in non-conference games. I mean, they've played tough, they've done this, they've done that, but man, you're talking about a win over TCU last year. They weren't able to beat BYU last year. Then they dropped both the Baylor, TCU. Why play some of these bigger games? Now you can make arguments all over the place for schools and how they should play regionally, and I think that's great. I think SMU should always play a power conference team from the state of Texas or one of the Southwest Conference days. I think that's good for the fans. I think that's good for all of those things. But you've got to secure your track to the college football playoff, because I will say this about the committee this year. They did value teams in power conferences that have one loss. You could say what you want about the Big 12 schedule and what that looks like. Texas Tech, BYU, but Texas Tech didn't play anyone in non-conference play. They did not play anyone. And they're sitting there with one loss on the season, which of course came when they didn't have their quarterback, and credit to them on that. But then you look at BYU. BYU's been able to, schedule a solid, slate. They took care of Stanford. They played another power conference team. So these things have got to be figured out by the ACC to ensure that this league has as much positive data points in their direction as it can. And so that's a conversation at the higher levels, and it's going to take a couple of years to let it play out. But at this point, there's really no reason to play some of these bigger games or schedule up the way Duke has. Like if anything, the conversation every year should be around Duke. Okay, being a one-loss team and the one loss coming in ACC play, and your other loss comes eventually in the conference championship game. That should be the conversation around Duke. Duke just is always going to have some of those roster difficulties because of how good of a school it is to get to the level that they need to be to winning some of these games against power conference opponents. And that's just the reality of Duke. Some of these other teams, they got to swing hard above their weight class and step up for the ACC. And that's what we'll be watching really closely as we watch some of these schedules and building these schedules play out over the years to come. So let's get to the chat here. We appreciate all of you guys for chiming in here on All Access AM. Again, hit that subscribe button to our YouTube channel, 7 to 8 a.m. Central Time, 8 to 9 Eastern Time, Monday, Wednesday, Thursday. We are live. Aviation, good to see you again. Cal has played a bunch of tough teams all season. Absolutely. Cal has had, I don't have any data to back this up. You could probably say that, Syracuse somewhere in there, ended up, because of how tucked up they are, traveled a bunch more, but they, were able to play Minnesota. They did play a San Diego State team that is bowl eligible. They did play Oregon State, although Oregon State is awful. And they ended up playing an ACC play, their murderer's row down the end of the season was Virginia, Louisville, SMU, 3 out of their last 4. And those were teams that were all in the conference championship race. One of them obviously still in the top 25 and playing for the ACC championship. So, and they also faced Duke. who is playing for the ACC Championship. So, yeah, Cal did have a tough schedule. Pony up 2-1-4. I have to be honest, if SMU was in Duke's position with Duke's record, I would say you should get in. Therefore, I have to be honest and say Duke should get in if they win the conference championship. I think Duke is a step above James Madison on a neutral field. The problem is right now the committee has teed it up where they didn't even put Duke at the end of the top 25 in that 25 spot. You know, they did not. They have Iowa at number 23. They could have dropped Iowa out. Heck, I would have said just drop Georgia Tech out, whatever, but put Duke in that 25 spot so then they can play a top 25 matchup for an ACC championship, and then whoever wins that could kind of advance. So we've got a couple more comments from Aviation as well. Pony up 2-1-4 as well right before that. You're in, you're out. They put 71 on UNC last year. Yeah, you can make the argument for James Madison. The committee certainly is. And Aviation, the ACC refs were quick to throw flags. Somebody said this, and I'd love for our listenership or viewership on All Access AM to maybe drop this in the comments and do some research for us. Somebody, I saw it on Twitter, where the ACC throws more flags than most conferences. I don't know if that's backed up, but certainly a something to talk about when you look at the penalized teams in the conferences. Lastly, am I a Bucs fan? I grew up one, and I'm not a huge NFL guy in a sense. I try to get away from it a little bit on Sundays, just because Saturdays and even Fridays and during the week is just dominated by football. So I did grow up a Bucs fan. I am a Bucs fan in a sense, but also married a Cowboys fan. So we're just miserable all the time around here. So, but we appreciate you guys. Pony up 2-4 and Aviation 1436 in the chat. Again, hit that subscribe button for us on YouTube if you're listening out there. I don't have too much else to say on the college football playoff. I will say this. I do think UVA beats Duke on Saturday in the ACC Championship. So a lot of this will be all for naught. And I will say Miami is not dead. Miami's not dead yet. So not dead yet. So keep an eye and kind of see what happens there to maybe see if the committee and some of the talking points around Miami continue to, get to that, level where they can get in. But I agree. It's going to be a really, really difficult task to see them getting in at this point because of the way the committee has put them in there. So that'll be something to certainly keep an eye on come Sunday, but we'll see. Yeah, exactly. Lose early, win late, and the committee lets you in. It's unbelievable. I mean, we should play an 8-game college football schedule. I don't know. Just ignore non-conference. It's the resume is the resume or the resume is not, because you could just call it an eye test and say, well, who do we think is playing the best at the end of the season and have it be picked if we're going to have a committee. But otherwise, that's just is what it is. So good stuff in there, Aviation. All right, let's move on from the college football playoff reactions. But before we do that, I do want to remind you guys as well about the La La Land Foundation. It is the holiday season. There are numerous ways to get involved with supporting the La La Land Foundation. We've spoken with you guys about it multiple times. It is a tremendous movement that is helping people transition from your youth into adulthood, in particular out of the foster care system. So great way to help better our country, our people, and help people achieve their dreams and goals who are also heavily motivated to do so. You know, these are people looking for that helping hand up to kind of assimilate into, you know, the public life and the world that, you know, many people were just lucky to grow up in a normal, you know, setting. And so you can help financially, you can help with your time, you can help with mentorship. You can come up with all sorts of different ways that you can help the La La Land Foundation, because that's what it's ultimately about, is kindness and just helping people. So this holiday season, go to lalalandfoundation.com and reach out and see if you can help make a difference, whether that be donating your time, donating your money, becoming a corporate partner, and doing internships. There's all sorts of different ways to help the La La Land Foundation continue to be one of the most incredible organizations that is coming onto the scene. It's still relatively new. It's partnered with the La La Land Kind Cafes that you can find across the country and continue to grow. So look up your La La Land Cafe today. Get yourself a great cup of coffee or some of their really, really good the avocado toast and some of their pastries are unbelievable. But you can also support the La La Land Foundation. So once you get introduced to what it's like to walk into a La La Land cafe, maybe you'll feel that extra connection to the foundation and want to help out. So we appreciate all of you guys who have clicked on that link and learned about La La Land Foundation. And it's in the podcast episode description on YouTube or on Spotify, Apple, wherever you listen. You can learn more on how you can assist the La La Land Foundation. So we appreciate them and their support of All Access AM. I do want to say, before we get into Tosh Lupoi, the ACC and kind of a quiet coaching carousel is a good thing and a bad thing in a sense. I do feel like this league could have used maybe a little bit more drama or something. Maybe Mario Cristobal had gotten on the hot seat a little bit after 2 losses in ACC play, but nonetheless, the league is now in a great spot from a coaching perspective. I think all of the positions are filled across the league, so that's a good spot to be in. But there are going to be assistant coaches changes and all of those things. Syracuse did make a lot of changes on their coaching staff. Fran Brown is now in the market for a new defensive coordinator as Elijah Robinson has been kind of demoted to co-defensive coordinator and defensive line coach. They also fired special teams coordinator Ricky Brunfield, offensive line coach Dale Williams, defensive backs coach Joe Schaefer, and co-defensive coordinator linebackers coach Robert Wright. Again, the Orange finished 3-9, 1-7 in ACC play. A lot of that, really ended up being with, Steve Angeli getting hurt. Really difficult situation there to have that happen. But this is a Syracuse team that I'll be intrigued to see what happens with them in 2026. You get Steve Angeli back. You have a good situation in that regard, but they just blew it up kind of in a sense. So I'm really, really watching to see what Syracuse does from a coaching staff perspective and who they hire and who they get in there and things like that. So Fran Brown, they have certainly been someone or a team that has been talked about a lot and then fell off after the injury with Steve Angeli, but some coaching changes there. Let's get to Cal hiring Oregon defensive coordinator Tosh Lupoi. He came up very quickly. He's a former Cal Bear. He played there, was the defensive line coach from 08 to 11. And you could see the reaction starting to roll in. Deshaun Jackson was pumped up about it. Some other guys were supporting it on social media. And Oregon's defense is stellar, 251.6 yards per game. They held opponents to 14.8 points per game, ranked in the top 10 nationally. And he's a former Nick Saban assistant. He ended up at Washington as well, and was defensive coordinator for Nick Saban at one point and spent some time in the NFL. He is widely regarded in coaching circles as one of the best recruiters in the country. I mean, if you really want to go down a rabbit hole, and some of these are probably gone as the internet is kind of eating up some of these message boards and things like that. But Tosh Lupoi and what he's able to do on the recruiting trail, you can see why he's got so much support from his, former teammates and things like that. I mean, helped get Najee Harris to Alabama in a really hard fought recruiting battle. I mean, his stat sheet on the recruiting battle side of things is really, really impressive, and just what he was able to do on a lot of those recruiting battles So I can tell you, he is just really, really a just stellar recruiter. And I think that in today's day and age, when you pair somebody like a Ron Rivera at the helm and you pair him with a stellar recruiter, that is really going to help you be in a strong position from a roster building perspective. And job number one for Tosh Lupoi is to get Jaron Kiwa Sagapatelli back in the fold at quarterback, the former five-star Oregon transfer. We all know the story of how he got to Cal, but teams are going to be calling, and they've got to get him signed. Tosh Lupoi is going to be critical in that, sitting down with him as soon as possible and getting things finalized with him so that he has his quarterback of the future, figuring out who his offensive coordinator is going to be, or if he's going to just keep Brian Harsin or Nick Rolovich and those guys. You saw some of the changes they made. It was really, really positive for them in that win over SMU this past weekend. So you look at Tosh and just he's always pushed that envelope in recruiting. He's going to bring that hard edge, hard edge to this defense and all of the things that you want your program's leader to be. And I think he'll be a nice balance there in Berkeley between kind of the stoic, well thought out Ron Rivera that is so well respected nationally, just across all coaching circles, and bringing the fire that Cal needs at that program. Because I mean, you have such a great history there. Aaron Rodgers, Marshawn Lynch, of course, so many others, Deshaun Jackson, who was vocal of the hire, and many, many more. So you have these great kind of Cal teams that have notable players on them, and you have a lot of history there that you can build off. You have a good rivalry with Stanford that you're looking to now get back on the other side of and get back on track. Tosh Lupoi is going to care at a very, very high level. And that's not to say Justin Wilcox didn't, but I mean, you can make the argument he's one of the most passionate coaches in college football right off the bat. He's going to probably say a couple of things that will probably be, ruffling the feather. Like, he might be a little bit like defensive version of Brent Key as far as like how like his demeanor is going to come off, but man, he can recruit, he can get talent, and you pair that with somebody who's got an eye for talent like Ron Rivera. This is now a very stable situation in Berkeley for the Bears. I've been following Tosh Lupoi for ever since I started following recruiting, was kind of his heyday of recruiting. And so I am really interested in seeing how this works out at Cal. And I know he's going to give every single bit of himself to Cal and see how it all pans out there with Cal football. So I've not seen a time frame on when they're going to announce him. I'll try to pull that up, but I do want to say, if you know, Air Oski, if you know when they're introducing Tosh Lupoi, please let me know in the chat. But I want to say, he said, I want to say thank you, Billy, for this video. As a Bears fan, I'm so happy we got Tosh, as Cal is a hard place to coach. I would agree with you. It is a hard place to coach. You've got to energize a fan base as well. It's going to take winning. Now, I mean, not to pull this back to SMU, but that was a program that you saw what winning did. Started filling the stadium, started to get people out there. Cal is a little bit unique, in a sense. You've got to really pull people out there to get them out to Berkeley. So that's going to be a challenge. But if they're winning ball games and they've got some star power, like JKS has that star power ability to take this to a maybe fun environment if they can get off to a 5-0, 6-0 type of start and really get things rolling. And that'll be really intriguing to watch kind of the fan base support there and how they can galvanize that. And I will say this too, in today's day and age of financial support and what you need, you really have somebody who has lived it, breathed it, loves it. It is a part of the fundraising piece. When you have somebody who can share that passion with donors and get them going, and maybe that $5 million donor who has the means to do all those things becomes a $10 million donor, and your program's life changes in a sense with money like that when you're in a position like Cal trying to build back up. So really excited to see what Tosh Lupoi does. Aroski, please hit that subscribe button if you're not subscribed and share with your friends. We try to talk about all ACC teams just about every episode. Now that we're kind of into the conference championship game week and we're in this and we're in that, it'll be a hit or miss at some points, but we really do try to mention every single ACC team, whether it be football, basketball, in some way on this show. So we appreciate you being here with us on this Wednesday. We're live 7 to 8 a.m. Central, 8 to 9 Eastern time, Monday, Wednesday, Thursday. Aviation coming through. Here's just the SMU example. SMU went from one of the least penalized teams in the country in 2022 and 2023. And even that 2022 SMU team was not there yet. They went to a bowl. They go to the ACC and become a top 5 penalized team in college football. 9 ACC teams are in the top 35 in penalties. So last season, there were just 2 teams in the top 35. And it is going to be really interesting to see if they can kind of get the officiating situation lined up. Appreciate Aroski for subscribing. That made my day. Thanks so much. We'll see you on Thursday morning. We've got a lot more time on the show, and we'll wrap up on coaching news. Pony Up 214, can you touch on Scott Simons? SMU defensive coordinator Scott Simons got a lot of notoriety earlier this week with Nebraska's airplane being in DFW. That was for the College Football Playoff Committee. But a lot of Nebraska fans, and it's kind of been a long rumored over the last year, maybe pursuit of Scott Simons if this defensive coordinator job came open. And so that is what a lot of this was rooted in. We did confirm Scott Simons does not have interest, and Nebraska, we don't know where they're going to go with their defensive coordinator hire. We would imagine there's interest, at least in vetting him and seeing, if this is a situation where it could play out. I know he was a candidate last year for them, but they are not going to get Scott Simons. So that's kind of the long and short of it. He's very happy in Dallas. Family's from here, well compensated from SMU's side of things. So things are in a good place there for Scott Simons when it comes to where he stands with SMU and him sticking around long term. He wants to be a head coach one day, but he's got his focus on fixing the roster, fixing the secondary, fixing some of the 2-minute defensive issues that things popped up with on SMU's side of things. And there's a lot of work to be done, and I can tell you he's working on it, and it really start today with some of their targets that they've got left out there on the board. One junior college defensive lineman that they're awaiting a decision on, and we will keep our eyes peeled on that. We do appreciate you guys listening. We are going to jump into the ACC SEC Challenge, but before we do that, I want to remind you guys of a great Christmas. And actually, hold on, aviation. You got one more question on Scott. You think Scott will eventually go coach somewhere else? And what do you think that timeline looks like? I'm not sure on timeline. So that's always a tough thing because you never know when something is going to come open that could interest you and get you to jump. That it could be best for your family. It could be a head coaching job. It could be a defensive coordinator job. It could be the NFL. I think eventually, odds are he'll go somewhere else one day. But where is that? Can he bounce back next year as a whole? And that's fair to say, and get back on track with the SMU defense and return it to where he's had it the last couple of years, really, and the promise that they showed in the first year too. That's question number one. If that happens, obviously things are going to continue to go well in that respect. And then you will see maybe some bigger team come after him that allows him to run the defense his way. That's also key. Texas A&M, they wanted him last year, but he said no because you're going under a defensive coach. It's like coaching, as Nick Saban or Kirby Smart's defensive coordinator. You've got to be there for a long, long time before anybody realizes that you're a really good coach. Like it took Kirby Smart years and years to be, Georgia's head coach. He waited that time to get that great opportunity that he earned. And the same thing goes with like a Glenn Schumann at Georgia right now. So those are things to watch. Like even the biggest of big jobs, like if Alabama came calling, he'd probably have to take it. That's just something that he'd probably have to do, right? But you look at a Georgia, he would probably go to a Georgia because that job is so big that if you make that move and you still take your time and spend it there, you're going to be at a very, very high level eventually from a coaching notoriety perspective to then become a head coach. He's got to continue for a couple more years to build top 25 defenses for somebody to go, man, look at what Scott Simon's doing over in Dallas. People are very high on him. He's been a Broyles Award semifinalist and finalist, but there's still just that wheels turning. And then there's the NFL. Do you want to spend your time as this crazy college football world we live in continues and be a coach that has to deal with all the contracts and all the things that the coaching community has to? That's a question a lot of coaches are facing. You can get paid generally more no matter what, even if you drop down to a position coach level in the NFL, and you get more time back too. So those are all things that long-term Scott Simons and many defensive and offensive coordinators are looking at across the country over these years. So good stuff there, guys, and appreciate the questions and the conversation on this Wednesday. It makes me really excited about what we're doing. And I tell you what, it's very exciting when you get an easy answer to, the age-old question. What do you get Uncle Gary? What do you get your grandfather for Christmas? Well, Doyle Glass has that answer for you. 2 of his books, Lions of Medina, Swift Sword, are incredible firsthand accounts of heroics, of valor, of heartbreak too, with some of these Vietnam veterans. And Doyle Glass just paints incredible pictures in both books. These are really, really intense reads of these battle tested situations that these books both take an in-depth look at. And he has another book on the World War II front coming out in 2026, maybe 2027. So keep an eye out for that. But Doyle Glass, his books, Swift Sword and Lines of Medina, are incredible Christmas gifts for your history buff loved one. So the link is in our episode description that you can go to, buy it directly on Amazon, or you can buy it on his website as well. You can get links there. Barnes & Noble, he's one of the best sellers there for Barnes & Noble. So we appreciate Doyle Glass's support of All Access AM, and make sure you guys pick up a book of his for this holiday season. It goes with a great gift. So, and before we get to the rest of the show, we have a quick word from our friends at Sportsmo as well.
Sportsmo lets you make a more direct impact on the game because it lets you, the fans, fund your favorite college football teams in a straightforward way. In a you win and I'll give way. In a I need you to show me your running game is alive and then I'll donate way. These real-time tax-deductible microfunds lead to impact your team can feel. Every cent you send mixes with every drop of sweat they put in. Form your squad. Boost your friends when a play comes through. A new way to follow the game. And cha-ching, your favorite team. So what do you say, difference makers? Ready to power the play? Sportsmo. Download today. Let's smo.
Appreciate them for their support of us at All Access AM. Guys, really, really fun time of the college basketball season for the ACC, coming off of an incredible Tuesday night for the league in the ACC SEC Challenge. Duke, I was watching most of this game. Incredible job to finish this one out. Duke wins over Florida 67-66 in Cameron Indoor. Isaiah Evans hit the go-ahead 3 to get this one. Just really, really hard-fought game. Duke jumped out to a big halftime lead, and then Florida battled back. And defense in the second half for Duke was not necessarily there, but they get the win nonetheless. Top 25 win over Florida. Big deal for that crew over there in Durham. Syracuse, though, stepping up arguably even more. There are a lot of questions around that team. Are they going to be good? Are they going to be, at the level that, they desire to be at? Well, they knock off Tennessee at home, 62-60. Tennessee, a top 15 team nationally, and Syracuse gets a much needed win there with some late free throw help, and they get the win over Tennessee. That was a big win for Syracuse, big win for the league, because that one going in, you're probably just kind of chalking it up as a loss in a sense. So that was a big deal. And then UNC taking care of business over Kentucky. Louisville did it earlier, and UNC said, we're not going to let you have all the fun. 67-64. UNC takes care of Kentucky. Terrific game here. I did not watch as much of this one, but I kind of saw it at like I had the multi-view going, but I was kind of locked in on the Duke-Florida game. My brother-in-law is a Gator, so I was keeping a little bit closer tabs on that. But 67-64, North Carolina gets a win, improved to 7-1 overall, and dish out a home loss for Kentucky. Really big deal there. To kind of go down the list here, scatter shoot, Virginia Tech beat South Carolina 86-83. So Clemson beat them on the football field, and Virginia Tech took care of business in basketball in overtime. Wake Forest did get beat up pretty good by Oklahoma at home, so tough loss there. Texas A&M beat Pitt. Miami did beat Ole Miss. That's a big win. I know Ole Miss wasn't ranked, but the Rebels, Chris Beard, very good basketball coach. That is a great win on the road for Jai Lucas, a team that was obviously deep in the NCAA tournament last year in Ole Miss. Jai Lucas in his first year, he has Miami trending up. This was a big night for the ACC, and this is probably the game that most people wouldn't necessarily be talking about, but Miami improves to 7-2 now. UGA, Georgia takes care of Florida State, just beats the brakes off of them, 107-73. Notre Dame, they're included in this, I guess, 76-71 over Missouri, and Cal beats Utah 79-72 in a non-conference matchup. Then you get this Wednesday slate. Louisville at Arkansas, 6:15 p.m. Central Time on ESPN. Clemson at Alabama, same time on ESPNU. LSU at Boston College on ACC Network at the same time. And then the evening slate, 8:15 games the rest of the way. SMU at Vanderbilt on SEC Network. NC State at number 20 Auburn on ESPN. That'll be a fun one. Will Wade, his first year. Stephen Pearl, his first year. I'm going to be tuned into that one in the multi-view. You guys know I'll be watching SMU take on top 25 Vandy as well. And then Mississippi State at Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech, ACC Network game. You know, opportunity for Georgia Tech to beat a Mississippi State team that generally is pretty down this year. So we'll be keeping close tabs on that. Yeah, SEC ESPN. Man, what they did with Lane Kiffin this weekend was crazy. Crazy behavior from ESPN on College Game Day. Kirk Herbstreit. Just the whole crew. Just crazy, honestly. And we could probably have a whole podcast on that. But look, the ACC is off to a really big start in this SEC challenge, a really statement non-conference so far for the league, and that's what you want. I mean, this is a league that kind of took it on the chin a little bit from the national narrative around it, and they have just stepped up and made a bunch of big wins happen and hard-fought ones. You know, nobody would have blamed Duke if they, had lost to Florida the way that game went down, but they were still able to pull it out and get on the right side of it. And it's a big deal. It's a big deal. John Shire to get that Duke win over Florida. And they were really, really pumped up about that one. So look, let's close out with this. Some signing day thoughts here. You still have to recruit at a high level in the transfer portal era from your high school ranks. You still have to deliver it. And that is something that is lost. That is something that fans don't necessarily, I don't want to say want to see, but fans also don't understand the mindset of, okay, we'll just fix it in the portal, do this, do that. It is, but it leaves you so much room for volatility. It leaves you a up and down situation most times. It doesn't mean you have to recruit like Notre Dame or Stanford and grab everybody from the high school ranks, but you do have to walk a line. And for the ACC, they did really take a step up this year in recruiting. And you look at the top 25 on Rivals. This is a league that is starting to improve. They're starting to get it in the right direction. Obviously, some teams like USC, assembling really, really elite classes. 34 commits for the Trojans, have them at number 1 nationally and going into signing day. But then Miami with a top 10 class. But then here's where it gets interesting. You kind of scroll down, and then you see Florida State up there at number 14. You see North Carolina in there. You see Clemson right ahead of them. Those are all good things. And then you've got SMU hanging out there as well. And Virginia Tech is making a late push for a top 25 class. This is all good for the league. It is really important that this continues to happen, and we see half the league in the top 25. That's where I'd like to see some of these programs take steps up in, because it helps you build more notoriety for your league, for what you're doing as a whole, and it really helps galvanize the fan bases a good bit. Here are the top classes in the ACC as a whole, just 1 through 17. Miami, Florida State, Clemson, North Carolina, SMU, Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech is already off to a hot start this signing day. I saw one flip. Granted, it was a James Madison flip, but hey, top 25 team right there, James Madison. But you look at what they've been able to do late here, and it's really impressive what Virginia Tech has done. I really want to have, this is one of my goals this month, is to get James Franklin on, or one of his guys on, to come and talk about, just how impressive of a job that they've done. All of these top recruits in the class are guys that James Franklin, identified, and really has been able to get them late in this cycle. And it's just really impressive to see it all come together for them. I mean, you got to scroll for a minute before you get down to a guy who was committed to Brent Pry. And look, that guy, Xavion Cleveland, could end up being one of the top guys, a 6'4", 185-pound safety. I mean, who knows? It could be Abdul Carter one day. I don't know. But you have a really, really impressive group that they've been able to assemble. They've done a really nice job. They're not done. I think they're going to really, be in a strong position to close well. And we'll keep an eye on it. But they're adding some talent in the trenches as well. So Virginia Tech doing a really nice job as a whole. And I think I just lost my camera, so give me 1 second here, and we'll get it lined back up, and we'll continue chatting about Virginia Tech and the ACC. Just 1 second here. Here we go. Back for a couple minutes left on ACC. Signing day is here for this league, and you go down the rest of the ACC, and you're going to see some programs that need to continue to elevate things. I mean, I look at a team like NC State down there at the bottom, 15th. That's a program right now without much momentum behind it because of the way their season kind of went, but and questions around Dave Dorian long term. But you really have a program there that is in a good talent area. Like, there's no reason they shouldn't be a top 10 recruiting class in the league. We know Duke, we know UVA. They're hard schools to get into. They're talented students that go there first and foremost, in a sense. But you've got to find a way, if you're an NC State, to really recruit above your weight class a bit and step up and invest in some of these kids from the high school ranks. And I know they have things to fix, so it's difficult to say that, but it starts there. It starts with evaluations and hitting on some of these high school kids that eventually save you money. So that's really important. Finally, lost in this week, and I should have kept this in the coaches thing, but this is the news cycle. Lost in this week was Bill O'Brien returning for the 2026 season. And that is one that, you really look at what they decided to do. And for me, it's a no-brainer. Bill O'Brien should be the coach in 2026 at Boston College. Obviously, he had an impressive first year there, kind of getting to bowl eligible. getting them rolling. But they finished 2-10 overall this year, 1-7 in the league. They got their last win, their first and only win over Syracuse in the last weekend. But you need investment from that school, and they don't have it right now. And they did announce that Bill O'Brien's going to return, but they're also going to invest money. And Blake James, the Boston College AD, said that they're going to invest in the full maximum level of rev share. Very important to compete in football to do that. So Blake James has his work cut out for himself to raise that money, to get that in the right situation. They did hire Kenyatta Watson, general manager. I've known of Kenyatta, had exchanges with him here and there through the years. Really, really good recruiter. Somebody who understands the roster management, the player development, all of those things. He's done it all throughout his career. So that is a good first step to get him in there as the GM and get things rolling. That gives them some notoriety with recruits too. So Kenyatta Watson takes over as the general manager. And then last but certainly not least, they're doing a $50 million challenge to match on a one-to-one basis over the next 5 to 7 years of new endowment gifts for athletics, from operational costs to all sorts of different things that they want to do and accomplish. So BC is doubling down. That's a good thing for the league. They've got history. They've got a storied program. They've got to figure it out, and they've got somebody who has the experience to do it. I'm not the biggest Bill O'Brien is that guy, but he has enough experience and talent, and he's from that area. He's got to be able to figure it out with these additional resources. I don't see a Tony Elliott level jump like UVA had, but they have a chance to kind of get this thing on the right track, especially if they get the right quarterback. So with that, guys, hope you guys enjoyed this edition of All Access AM. But before we go, do want to really shout out Pony Up 214 with a super chat here. This is awesome. Thank you. You and Arowski made my day by subscribing in the super chat. Who should SMU's bowl opponent be? Well, that is a great question. I don't know. Let's look at the top 25 in a sense, and we could probably get a little bit of an answer. When you look at SMU and where they could go like a Holiday Bowl or Duke's Mayo Bowl or a Gator Bowl, you're probably looking at some combination of an SEC or Big Ten team. I mean, I could see them playing like a Tennessee. They're not in the top 25, but that could be a team that SMU could face. On threes, bowl projections are certainly there, and SMU is projected to face Arizona in the Holiday Bowl, so that would be a Big 12 opponent. There's also sorts of ways it could go, but if they stay on the East Coast kind of stretch, Gator Bowl, Pop-Tarts, kind of all sorts of those, they could very well be facing an SEC team. So with that, guys, we are wrapping up this edition of All Access AM. Thanks for joining us on this Wednesday. Please hit that subscribe button to our YouTube channel, All Access AM. Thank you to OPW Solutions for supporting us, sponsoring our Wednesday show, as well as the La La Land Foundation and Doyle Glass. We appreciate all of you guys for listening, chatting with us, and we really appreciate it. Thanks so much, everyone, and have a great Wednesday. We'll see you Thursday morning, where we share our final predictions and previews of Duke UVA for the ACC Championship.